welcome to my channel. Today is all about real life pouring, sort of targeted at newbies, but if you are not, maybe there will be some tips that will help you out. If you are not and you have some tips, leave them in the comment section and we can kind of keep this conversation going. But I thought about starting this because a lot of people who make videos have a dedicated space for pouring that may be a room or a large area where they have, just this really nice spacious place to put all their stuff and to pour and let it dry and all of that stuff. And that's just not realistic for everybody. When I started pouring, I didn't have that. I'm now in a very large closet. So I've made a space in my house work, but if you're just starting, you're not going to want a dedicated space in your house for pouring. And real life here, people. I have 4 kids. We homeschool. Our house can be somewhat cluttered sometimes, not always, thank goodness, but there's just always stuff going on, so you just kind of have to make do. So I'm going to show you how I started pouring when I just had a teeny tiny space, and I'm right where I did my first pours. I'm on a part of my kitchen counter that's about 2 feet by 2 feet. I have a I don't know, Dollar Tree, Walmart, something like that. It's a little thicker than Dollar Tree's. So just tablecloth here that I've put down on my counter. And then I have a tote lid. And this is exactly how I poured for a very long time. These 8x10 canvases fit wonderfully on a little tote lid. You don't need anything even under your canvas if it has ridges or something. And it collects the paint, and it, when it's still wet, you can very carefully pick it up and move it, put it somewhere else. You can put it on top of your tote, which has all your supplies in it, so that everything kind of fits in this little cube. So if you don't have a lot of space to pour, or you're just starting and you're like, I don't want, all these people in these videos have all this space, and it looks like they just have this. Oh, Cooper, no. And see, real life, there's my 3-year-old. I know you want to see, but there's wet paint, sweetie. So anyway, we don't all have that, and certainly if you're starting, who wants to dedicate a whole area of their house to starting a new hobby that they're not sure they're going to love, or whatever. So anyway, the most important thing about a tote lid is to make sure when you put your painting down it's level. Obviously you want a level surface, but that's not a big deal. And actually I used a tote lid when I first started. A pizza box works as well because it has those it has sides to it. I pour a lot of times just on a tablecloth now that I raised my canvas off of, but I didn't feel comfortable with that at first because I wasn't sure how far the paint was going to spread. And like I said, I did it on my kitchen counter, so I didn't want this big mess to have to try and clean up. And having it all on a tote lid that you can just pick up and move and put somewhere safe where it's not going to get bumped, or have kiddos put their fingers in it, or animals or whatever, just seemed much more feasible to me. And like I said, if you can fit all your supplies in a tote, and then you can stick this on top of it while it dries, and then, when it's done drying, peel the paint off, and there you have everything you need, except your canvases. I still haven't figured out a good way to store canvases without them just totally taking over life. So, okay, so since we are kind of targeting newbies here, I'm going to let you know ahead of time that I have a link in the description bar for mixing paint. It's my video, but I'll link a couple of others too if you're interested, but I didn't want to go over all of that here because that I think was like, 15-minute video mixing, but I am using Floetrol as my pouring medium. If you are not in the United States, Floetrol is a great option. They're pretty much exactly the same. I think they are exactly the same. If you can't find that, go to a hardware store, ask for a paint conditioner to eliminate brush strokes, and that should work. It needs to be latex based for water-based paints. Some of my paints here are basics. Some are Arteza. The purple might even be like a craft paint. And I just mix that with the Floetrol, a little bit of water. This is the best oil I have found for cell. Whoa, see, I just made a mess. Just a moment. Okay, guys, so I cleaned up, got as much scooped back into the container as I could. Like I said, this is real life, unedited pouring, including my dog who's begging me for water. Okay, so as I was saying, this Spot On treadmill belt lubricant is from Amazon. I believe Spot On now sells one that says it's for pouring or whatever, but it's all the same. It's just this 100% silicone. This really is great. I've had it for a long time and I've barely used any because you just use a drop or two per color. And if you want cells, this is really the best silicone I have found for that. I've tried quite a few. It's not quite as easy, you know, like the spray silicone you can find at Lowe's or whatever if you want to start. If you're impatient, like I get sometimes. But it's well worth waiting a couple days for Amazon to deliver it. Okay, so take a drink of coffee. Okay, so anyway, where was I? I got interrupted. This is why I paint usually at night, but I really did want to show you more of a realistic middle of the day, kind of in the midst of life pour for people who are new, or if you haven't poured yet and you're watching all these videos where it's all set up perfectly and edited perfectly. I know some people are probably going to complain that this isn't edited perfectly because some people do, but this is real life, folks. Okay, so Floetrol, water, paint, and a drop or two of silicone if you want cells, and that's really all you need. Now, for space saving, because if you do a lot of pours and you have a lot of paint left over, that does take up space. I try and go through my leftovers once in a while because they really do build up. So if you don't want leftover paint, if you want to pour and be done, you can go to artresin.com. They have I'll link to that in the description bar also. They have a usage guide, or I think they call it the usage calculator on there that shows how much you need to cover an area in resin. Now that is just for like a smooth cover of resin. So what I do is I double it or almost double it for a pour. But then you know you're going to use all of the paint. You're not going to have anything left over. You can mix just the right amount of paint. So you don't have a bunch of little containers like this just sitting around. And if you have the room to let them dry, you can peel the paint off and use them again over and over and over. So, and I used to just make enough paint to use in that one pour. And I probably should go back to that, but I don't mind leftovers. So anyway, for an 8x11 canvas, it suggested 3 ounces. These cups are 5 ounces, so I'm going to want to pretty much fill this up. I'll probably pour a little bit on the corners or something to make sure that I have enough. This is just a canvas I'm going to pour over. I don't really particularly mind this one, but I did want to show you on a tote lid, and this is my only 8x11. This is like the perfect size for this particular tote lid. And all the paint, when it dries, will peel off just perfectly when I'm done, so it'll be nice and clean. Okay, so I'm going to do a flip cup just because it's pretty much the easiest. Excuse me, if you are new, it's going to be, you know, a great technique to start with. Although, I don't know why, none of them are, you know, whatever you particularly like is the best one to start with. Whatever style got you interested in it to begin with. So, I have purples, I have a yellow, and I have this, I think this is Payne's Gray mixed, this is Payne's Gray mixed with some white. So, I'll let you, if you want to know how to mix, I do have a video, but I will show you one thing real quick. If you're new and you want cells, the consistency you're looking for, if you coat your stick and you spread your finger through it, run your finger through it, and it starts to run back together, do that again. You can't see very well on the camera, I bet, but if it starts to run back together, but doesn't run back together all the way, it's perfect. If it doesn't move at all, it's too thick. If it runs back together and you can't see where your finger was at all, it's too thin. It's a bit like testing a custard. I call it the custard test because if you've ever made custard, that's sort of how you tell if it's ready or not. So this is the cup I'm going to do my flip with. I'm going to put a little bit of white in there on the bottom. Some purple. One of my very first pours was purple and yellow, and it was so pretty. And my canvas warped like crazy. And it was ruined, and I was very, very sad. So I'm kind of doing that with a little bit of this Payne's Gray thrown in. Okay, now I will say, depending on how you layer this, I'm going to put a lot of purple. I don't like tons of layers. I usually do 2 of each color. That's sort of my go-to, but it's just, mostly it's just become more of a habit than anything. Usually do like 1 layer of white and then 2 layers of everything else, although I might do some more white just to fill it up. But the more layers you have, the more kind of color mixing you're in it. I don't know. And this is total personal taste here. This is not suggesting how you should layer your cup in any way. It's just I'm going to top it off with a little like personal preference. Okay. So let's get these off of here. Now if I hadn't spilled that yellow, I would be able to just fold this tablecloth up when I was done and move my tote lid to a safer area in my house away from my kids, but I didn't. I did spill my yellow, so I'm going to have to wipe that off and clean it. Okay. Here is my canvas. Okay, so I'm going to do a flip cup. Gosh, it's obviously been a while since I've done a flip cup. It took me a minute to figure it out. So this has 5 ounces in it, which is just about enough. I am going to do the corners real quick in purple, just because it's harder to get the corners sometimes. And because I'm about an ounce short of doubling what they said on, which really isn't a big deal. Art resin, that's close enough, I think. Okay, and what I am going to do too is a little bit of straight Floetrol here around the cup, just to help get that paint moving when I lift that cup. It's not necessary. That is not a necessary step at all. But I find it does help the paint flow, but you do not need to do that. Okay, ready? And then I'm just going to lift. I'm going to torch before I tilt. Again, that's a personal preference thing, but I like bigger cells, so I'm going to torch and then tilt. Most of the cells have come off anyway. And then I have this little cardboard piece that I'm going to put on the corners in the direction that I'm tilting to kind of help keep most of that paint on the canvas. I'm just going to tilt away so I have it covered. And there we have it. Put that on there instead of on the thing. And there we go. A pretty purple and yellow pour with some white on there. My Payne's Gray kind of disappeared. I kind of like that. Purple is my favorite. So that dark purple with some yellow and white down here. Really like. So now I probably will wait just a hair bit, but as you can see, whoops, I can very carefully pick this up and move it somewhere else. I would not walk through your entire house unless you are very coordinated. I am not, so that probably would not be a great idea for me. But after it dries a little bit, it's safe to, move. There was one other tip I was going to mention, and I totally forget now. Oh, do make sure though, especially if you're using a tote lid, because they can bubble, that before you use it, you make sure that your canvas is level, and if it's not, you can raise it up with something, or whatever, just to make sure that, because if it's not, all the paint's gonna, go to whatever side's the lowest. But other than that, once this is dry, I can take it off. All this paint down here will just peel off for the next pour. I can put this on top of my tote with all my supplies in it in a closet or a small space, and have my kitchen back. So I hope that was helpful for you. If you have any other helpful hints for trying to fit pouring into real life, leave them in the comment section so people can be helped by that. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope this was a little bit helpful for those of you who need to sort of fit it into something a little bit more realistic than an entire room set aside for pouring. Until next time, guys, happy pouring. Almost.